If you are over 35 and you feel like debt is quietly running your life, this video is for you. Be honest with yourself for 1 second. How many nights have you lied awake doing math in your head? Not the good kind of math. The kind where you are subtracting bills from a number that keeps shrinking. Everyone tells you debt after 35 is just part of adult life, something you manage forever. That is a lie that keeps you comfortable and broke at the same time. Today, I am going to walk you through the 10 debt mistakes that quietly wreck people after 35. And here is the part nobody warns you about. Mistake number 6 is the one that catches almost everyone off guard. Because after 35, these mistakes do not just cost you money, they cost you years. Years you do not get back. And the wild part, fixing this does not require a finance degree or a 6-figure income. It requires recognizing the patterns before they recognize you. So stick with me, because mistake number 4 alone could be draining hundreds of dollars from you every single month. Let's start with why this hits so much harder once you cross 35. 10 mistakes, 1 video, and by the end, you will know exactly which ones are draining you right now. I am not here to lecture you about lattes or avocado toast. That advice is tired and it misses the real problem. The real problem is almost always structural, not a matter of willpower or discipline. So if you have ever felt smart everywhere else in life except when it comes to money, you are not alone. And you are definitely not broken. You are just running patterns nobody ever sat you down and explained. Stay until the end, because Chapter 11 shows you exactly what happens when several of these mistakes stack together. That number might be the most important thing you see in this entire video. Take a second and actually picture your own wallet right now. How many cards are living in there quietly? Now picture the number you would see if you added every single balance together in one sitting. Most people have never actually done that exercise. Not once. Not even during tax season. That avoidance is not laziness. It is a completely normal, very human response to something that feels threatening. But normal does not mean helpful. And today we are going to replace avoidance with a clear, simple map. This is not a shame video. I am not here to make you feel small about decisions made years ago. I am here because I have watched smart, hardworking people quietly lose a decade to patterns they never named. Naming the pattern is the first step. The next 9 chapters give you that exact language. Quick promise before we dive in. Every single mistake in this video comes with a fix you can start today, not someday. No jargon, no spreadsheets you need a degree to understand. Just plain language and patterns you will recognize instantly. Think of this less like a lecture and more like a conversation with a friend who finally did the math for you. I have sat across the table from dozens of people just like you. Same worries, same late-night calculator sessions. Every single one of them shared the same realization once they saw the full picture. It was more fixable than they feared. That is the entire goal of the next 35 minutes. Replacing fear with a clear, workable plan. Here is a question worth sitting with for just a moment before we move forward together. If nothing changes about how you handle debt, where does that quietly leave you in 10 years from today? That question is not meant to scare you. It is meant to give tonight's decision some real weight behind it. Grab a notebook if you have one nearby, because a few things in this video are worth writing down as we go. You do not need to remember everything perfectly. You just need to catch the 1 or 2 points that hit closest to home. Alright, deep breath. Let's actually get into the 10 mistakes now. Starting with the one that quietly traps the most people. Here is the math nobody says out loud. At 25, a debt mistake has 30 or 40 years to get corrected. At 45, that same mistake has maybe 15 or 20 working years left to fix itself. The runway is shorter, and every dollar that goes to interest instead of savings is a dollar that will never compound. Add to that the responsibilities stacking up. A mortgage, kids in school, aging parents who might need help soon. Debt after 35 does not exist in isolation. It competes with retirement savings you cannot afford to delay. It competes with your health, because financial stress is directly linked to poor sleep and chronic anxiety. And it competes with your relationships, because money fights are one of the top reasons marriages fall apart. So when I say these 10 mistakes are dangerous, I do not mean mildly inconvenient. I mean structurally dangerous. The compounding clock does not care how busy you are or how good your intentions were. It just keeps ticking. So let's get into it. 10 mistakes, real patterns, and exactly how to catch each one before it compounds. There is also a psychological shift that happens right around this age, one economists rarely talk about. Before 35, money mistakes feel like learning experiences. After 35, they start to feel like character flaws. That shame spiral is dangerous because shame makes people avoid their finances instead of confronting them. And avoidance, as we will see again and again in this video, is the quiet fuel behind almost every mistake on this list. Here is the good news hiding inside all of this. Awareness alone, just seeing the pattern clearly, diffuses most of its power. You do not need perfect financial knowledge. You need to recognize these 10 specific patterns when they show up in your own life. Let's talk about something economists call the compounding runway, because it explains almost everything in this video. Every dollar of debt you carry is not just a dollar. It is that dollar, plus the interest it generates, plus what that interest could have earned if invested instead. Financial researchers call this the opportunity cost of debt, and it grows heavier with every year that passes. At 25, a 5-year detour into bad debt still leaves 35 years to recover and rebuild momentum. At 45, that same 5-year detour eats into the exact years meant for the steepest part of retirement growth. This is not meant to scare you. It is meant to explain why urgency matters more now than it did a decade ago. The good news, once you understand the runway is shorter, you also start making sharper, faster decisions. Urgency, used correctly, is not anxiety. It is focus. There is also a biological piece to this that rarely gets mentioned in personal finance content. Chronic financial stress raises cortisol, and elevated cortisol over years is linked to real, measurable health costs. So this is not only about dollars. Fixing these patterns is also, quietly, a health intervention. And after 35, health and finances are more connected than most people ever expect them to be. Keep that in mind as we go through the list. This is not just about your bank account, it is about how you feel every day. There is one more factor that makes 35 a real turning point. The visibility of your future finally sharpens. At 25, retirement is an abstract idea. At 45, you can often see it clearly enough to actually plan around it. That clarity is a gift, even when the number it reveals feels uncomfortable at first glance. Here is a short mental exercise before we move on. Picture your current debt frozen exactly as it is for 10 more years. Now picture it with just 3 fixes applied consistently over that same decade. The gap between those two futures is the entire point of this video. None of this requires perfection, by the way. It requires direction, and direction beats perfection every single time. Keep that in mind as we move through each mistake, because a few of them may sting a little, and that is okay. Let's get into mistake number 1. Keep this idea close as we go. Shorter runway just means sharper choices, not impossible ones. Keep that shorter runway idea in your back pocket. It will make every fix ahead feel more urgent and more doable at once. Mistake number 1, and it is the quiet killer. Only ever paying the minimum on your credit cards. On the surface, it feels responsible. You are paying something every single month. But minimum payments are engineered, quite literally engineered, to keep you in debt as long as possible. A $5,000 balance at 20% interest, paying only the minimum, can take over 15 years to clear. 15 years, and you will have paid more in interest than the original balance itself. Here is why this trap works so well psychologically. The minimum number feels small and manageable. Your brain registers it as handled. Problem solved. Box checked. But your brain is wrong, because the real balance behind that small number is barely moving. Take David, 41, from Ohio. He had 3 cards, all on minimum payments for almost 6 years. He assumed he was chipping away at it. When he finally ran the real numbers, the balance had barely dropped. The fix is not complicated. Any amount above the minimum, even $50 extra, changes the entire trajectory, because that extra money attacks the principal directly, and the principal is what interest is calculated from. Shrink the principal faster, and the interest has less to feed on every single month. So if you take one thing from this chapter, it is this. The minimum payment is the bank's plan for you, not yours. Let's make this concrete with real numbers, because vague warnings never actually change behavior. On a $5,000 balance at 22%, the minimum payment might only be around $125. Of that $125, roughly $90 goes straight to interest in the early months. Only $35 touches the actual balance. That ratio slowly improves over time, but it starts brutally lopsided, and most people never realize how lopsided it truly is. This is exactly why credit card companies are comfortable offering such low minimum payments in the first place. A low minimum is not generosity. It is a carefully calculated number that maximizes how long you stay a paying customer. Even doubling your minimum payment on a high-interest card can cut years off your payoff timeline. Let's zoom into what actually happens inside your statement every single month on a minimum-only plan. The bank calculates interest first, based on your average daily balance, before your payment even touches the principal. That is why the balance seems to barely move for months, sometimes years, even while you are technically paying on time every cycle. It is not because you are doing anything wrong. It is because the structure of minimum payments was never designed to move fast. Here is a simple mental model that helps. Treat the minimum payment as the floor, never the ceiling. Anything above that floor, even inconsistent extra payments, chips away at the true balance instead of just servicing interest. Consistency beats intensity here. $50 extra every single month outperforms $500 extra once a year. Because interest is calculated daily or monthly, a steady rhythm keeps shrinking the base it is calculated from. Here is one more layer to the minimum payment trap that catches people off guard: promotional interest rates ending quietly. A 0% introductory rate can lull you into comfort, right up until it snaps back to 20-something% overnight. If you are on a promotional rate, mark the exact end date somewhere visible, not buried in an email you will forget. Plan to have that balance significantly reduced or moved before that date arrives, not after you are surprised by it. Consider setting up an automatic extra payment, even a small fixed amount, the same day your paycheck lands each month. Automation removes the willpower requirement entirely, which is exactly why it works so reliably over time. A quick note: if you are currently juggling multiple minimum-only cards, you are not behind. You are simply at the starting line most people reach. The starting line is not the problem. Staying there for years without adjusting anything is the actual mistake we are fixing today. And if you are already doing this, minimum payments only, for more than one card, know that fixing even one changes the pattern. Momentum on one card almost always spreads to the rest once you feel that first real balance actually drop. Onward to mistake number 2, the one hiding in plain sight. Mistake number 2, not knowing, actually knowing, the full picture of what you owe. Not an estimate, not a rough guess, the real number, across every card, every loan, every account. Most people avoid this the same way they avoid a doctor's appointment they are dreading. If I do not look at the number cannot hurt me. That is the logic your brain runs on. Except the number keeps growing whether you look at it or not. This is called financial avoidance, and studies on money psychology show it is incredibly common after 35. Because by 35, the debt often has history, shame attached to it, old decisions you would rather forget. Take Priya, 38, a marketing manager. She had 6 different accounts and genuinely did not know her total owed. When she finally added it all up, the number was almost double what she had guessed in her head. Not because she was reckless, but because nobody had ever seen the whole thing in one place. Here is the psychological shift that matters. Once you see the full number, it stops being a monster in the dark. It becomes a fixed target. And fixed targets, unlike vague fears, can actually be hit. One sheet of paper, every debt, every interest rate, every minimum payment. 15 minutes, once, changes everything after it. There is a simple tool for this, and it costs nothing. A single spreadsheet or even a sheet of paper works fine. List every single debt, the lender, the balance, the interest rate, the minimum payment. Nothing fancy, just complete. Most people who do this exercise for the first time describe the exact same feeling. Relief mixed with a bit of shock. Relief because the vague dread finally has a shape. Shock because the shape is usually bigger than they imagined. But here is what matters most. A known number, however large, is something you can build a plan against. An unknown number, no matter how small it might actually be, will keep generating anxiety indefinitely. There is a reason this particular mistake feels different from the others. It is invisible until the exact moment you look. Unlike a missed payment, not knowing your total debt never triggers a phone call, a late fee, or a warning letter. Nothing forces the reckoning, which is exactly why so many people go years without ever doing this simple exercise. Here is a trick that makes this easier emotionally. Do it with a neutral, almost clinical mindset, like an accountant, not a judge. You are not grading your past choices. You are simply collecting data, the same way a doctor takes your blood pressure. Data does not judge. Data just informs the next decision, and that reframe alone removes most of the emotional weight. Once you have the full picture, something interesting tends to happen. The number stops growing in your imagination. It becomes fixed, finite, and honestly, almost always smaller than the anxious version living in your head. A small tip that makes this exercise far less intimidating: do it with your favorite drink and zero distractions. Turn off notifications for 15 minutes. This deserves the same focus you would give an important work task. Once the number exists on paper, take a photo of it, or save the file somewhere you will actually see it again. This becomes your baseline. Every future check-in gets compared back to this exact starting point. Nothing more complicated. Once you have the number, resist the urge to immediately judge it. Just let it exist on the page for a day. Judgment rarely produces action. Clarity does. Give yourself the clarity first, and the motivation tends to follow naturally. If the number you calculate feels heavier than expected, that is completely normal, and it does not define your next 10 years. It defines your starting point, nothing more. Every single strategy in the rest of this video works from wherever that number happens to sit. Once this exercise is done, resist the temptation to immediately fix everything at once. That usually backfires quickly. Pick one lever, pull it consistently, and let the rest of the plan follow in its own time. Now let's talk about a mistake that quietly funds an entire lifestyle without anyone noticing. One sheet of paper, one honest hour, and the fog around your finances lifts more than most people expect. This single sheet becomes the quiet foundation every other chapter in this video builds directly on top of. Mistake number 3, and this one stings a little. Using credit to fund a life your income cannot actually support. Not emergencies, not unexpected repairs. I mean the dinners out, the upgrades, the things that used to feel earned. By 35, there is real pressure to look like you have arrived. A nicer car, a bigger vacation, a remodeled kitchen. And credit makes that illusion incredibly easy to buy, one swipe at a time. This is not really a spending problem at its core. It is a gap between identity and income. You are not buying the object. You are buying the feeling of being someone who has already made it. Take Andre, 39, an engineer earning a solid salary who still carried $18,000 in card debt. When we traced it back, almost none of it was emergencies. It was dinners, upgrades, and keeping pace with friends. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Nobody at that dinner table was checking anyone else's bank balance. The pressure was almost entirely self-imposed. The fix starts with one honest question before every purchase over $100. Am I buying this, or am I buying a feeling? Because feelings bought on credit always come with a bill, and that bill always arrives later than expected. There is a term for this in behavioral finance, lifestyle creep, and it accelerates hard right around 35. Every raise, every promotion, gets absorbed almost instantly into a slightly upgraded version of everything you already had. The upgrade never feels like the problem in the moment. It feels like a reward you have genuinely earned, and often it is earned. The issue is not the reward itself, it is financing rewards you have not actually paid for yet. A simple test that works well. Could you pay for this specific purchase in cash today without touching savings? If the honest answer is no, that purchase is quietly borrowing from a future version of you who has less room to fix it. There is a subtle version of this mistake that rarely gets talked about. financing convenience instead of luxury. It is not the vacation or the car. It is the small daily conveniences that quietly add up to a much bigger number. Takeout instead of cooking, ride shares instead of planning ahead, subscriptions nobody remembers signing up for. None of these purchases feel dangerous individually. That is exactly what makes them dangerous collectively. Try this exercise for 1 week. Write down every single purchase, no matter how small, on a single index card. By day 7, most people are genuinely shocked by the pattern staring back at them from that little card. This is not about eliminating every convenience from your life. It is about spending on purpose instead of on autopilot. Autopilot spending is where credit quietly funds a lifestyle your actual paycheck was never built to support. There is a version of this mistake that hides behind good intentions, buying things specifically to relieve stress from other areas of life. It is called retail therapy for a reason. It genuinely does spike dopamine for a short window of time. The problem is, the spike fades fast, usually within a day, while the bill and the interest stick around for months. If stress is driving the spending, the real fix is addressing the stress directly, not routing it through a credit card. A helpful boundary many people use, a 24-hour rule for any non-essential purchase over $100. Wait 1 full day before confirming it. Most impulse purchases lose most of their pull once that day has passed. It also helps to reconnect spending with a clear, personal reason rather than a vague sense of deserving something. Ask what this purchase is actually in service of: your family, your future self, or simply the feeling of the moment. Once you spot this pattern in your own spending, do not panic. Simply redirect one purchase at a time back toward cash. Small redirections, repeated consistently, quietly dismantle the entire lifestyle gap over just a few months. Now for the mistake that determines how fast every dollar you free up actually works for you. Notice how often the purchase is really about who is watching, rather than what you actually need in that moment. Removing the audience from the decision, even just mentally, tends to shrink the price tag you are willing to accept. Redirecting even one recurring purchase back to cash each month adds up to real, visible progress within a single season. Mistake number 4, and this is the one I warned you about at the start: ignoring high-interest debt first. Most people pay off debts by whatever feels emotionally easiest, the smallest balance, the one that annoys them most. Meanwhile, the 24% interest credit card sits there quietly, growing faster than anything else you own. This is the difference between the snowball approach and the avalanche approach, and it matters more than people realize. Snowball feels good emotionally because you clear small debts fast. Avalanche saves you the most actual money. After 35, with less runway to recover, the math usually has to win over the feeling. Take Lauren, 42. She had a car loan at 6% and a card at 26%. She had been aggressively paying down the car loan because the balance felt bigger and scarier. Meanwhile, that 26% card was quietly costing her almost 4 times more in interest every month. Once she flipped her strategy and attacked the highest interest debt first, her payoff timeline dropped by nearly 2 years. List every debt by interest rate, highest to lowest, ignore the balance size completely, and attack the top of that list. Everything else gets the minimum. Every spare dollar goes to the most expensive debt in the room. Here is a simple example to make the avalanche method concrete. 3 debts: a car loan, a card, and a personal loan. Rank them purely by interest rate. Highest rate goes to the top of the list, regardless of how big or small the balance is. Every extra dollar you have goes toward that top debt, while everything else gets its normal minimum payment, nothing more. Once the top debt is gone, the amount you were paying toward it does not disappear. It rolls into the next highest rate debt. This is why it is called an avalanche. The payoff power builds and builds as each debt clears. If the snowball method is the only thing that keeps you motivated enough to stick with a plan, that is genuinely fine too. The best method is not the mathematically perfect one. It is the one you will actually follow for the next 12 months. Let's put real numbers next to the avalanche method, so you can see exactly why interest order matters this much. Imagine $4,000 on a card at 24% and $6,000 on a car loan at 7%. The card, despite being the smaller balance, is generating almost 3 times more interest costs per dollar owed. If you split extra payments evenly between both, the expensive one keeps compounding while you feel busy fixing the wrong target. Redirect that same extra money entirely to the card first, and the total interest paid across both debts drops significantly. This is not a small optimization. On real numbers like these, it can mean thousands of dollars saved over the full payoff. The math does not care which debt feels more emotionally urgent. It only cares which one is costing you the most per day. One more nuance worth mentioning. Some debts carry emotional weight that the pure math does not capture, and that is okay. A small medical debt tied to a hard season, for example, might be worth clearing early purely for peace of mind. The avalanche method is the mathematically optimal default, but you are allowed to adjust it for your own real life. Just make that choice consciously, on purpose, rather than defaulting into it out of pure avoidance of the math. Write the interest rates directly on your actual bills or statements with a marker, so the order stays visible daily. Visibility keeps the priority front of mind, especially on the days when motivation naturally dips a little. Revisit your interest rate list every few months, because promotional rates expire and new cards sometimes get added along the way. A living list beats a perfect list you made once and forgot about entirely. Print this order out, or write it on a sticky note, and keep it somewhere you will see it every time you pay a bill. Repetition of the correct order eventually turns it into instinct, and instinct is what protects you on busy, distracted months. Now let's talk about the trap that looks like a solution, but often becomes a whole new problem. Think of interest rate order as your financial compass. It rarely feels exciting, but it never points you the wrong way. Trust the compass over the feeling, especially on the days the feeling is loudest. Stick with this order even on months it feels slow. The compounding benefit shows up later, but it always shows up. Mistake number 5, and this one can spiral fast. Taking out new debt just to cover old debt. A personal loan to pay off a credit card. A new card to cover a missed loan payment. On paper, it can look like progress. In reality, it is often just moving the same water between buckets. Sometimes this move genuinely helps, when it lowers your interest rate meaningfully and comes with a real payoff plan. But most of the time, it is a stress response disguised as a strategy. Take Marcus, 44. He consolidated 3 cards into one loan, felt instant relief, and opened 2 new cards within a year. Nothing about his spending habits had actually changed. Only the paperwork had changed. Within 18 months, he was carrying more total debt than before the consolidation ever happened. This is the trap. Debt consolidation without a spending fix is just a longer runway toward the same wall. Before you ever consolidate or refinance anything, ask one question. What actually caused this debt in the first place? If that root cause is still active, new debt just buys you a few quiet months before the same pattern returns. A useful rule before consolidating anything: never take on new debt during the same month as a major emotional event. A layoff, a breakup, a health scare. These are exactly the moments when a fast fix feels most tempting and least examined. Give any big financial decision at least a week of distance from the emotional spike that triggered the idea. If the new loan or card still makes sense after that week, with a clear number attached to when it ends, it might be worth it. If it was really about calming a feeling in the moment, that feeling will have passed, and the decision usually passes with it. There is a specific warning sign that this mistake is happening, and it is worth naming clearly right now. If you are applying for new credit specifically to make an old payment on time, that is the sign. Full stop. Healthy borrowing has a clear purpose and a clear end date attached to it before the first dollar moves. Reactive borrowing has neither. It exists purely to make today's problem quiet for a little while longer. The uncomfortable truth is that reactive borrowing rarely buys peace. It usually just buys a slightly later, slightly bigger crisis. Breaking this pattern almost always requires an honest conversation, sometimes with a partner, sometimes with a financial counselor. There is no shame in that conversation. The only real shame is repeating the same cycle silently for another 5 years. If you are already in this cycle right now, here is the first move, and it is smaller than you think. Stop opening any new credit for 30 days. Just 30. No new cards, no new personal loans, nothing. That single pause creates enough space to see the pattern clearly instead of reacting to the next loud bill. 30 days will not fix everything, but it breaks the reflex. And breaking the reflex is where real change actually starts. If a new loan is ever genuinely necessary, get the payoff plan in writing before signing anything at all. A plan on paper turns a vague hope into a concrete commitment you can actually track month to month. If you notice yourself justifying a new loan with the word just this once, just to catch up, pause right there. That specific word is often the clearest signal that the decision is emotional rather than strategic. If you have already fallen into this cycle once or twice, that does not disqualify you from fixing it starting today. Every single person on this list started exactly where you might be sitting right now, mid-pattern, ready for a change. Let's move to the mistake that turns a bad day into a bad year if it goes unaddressed. A short pause before any new loan protects you from a decision your calmer self would likely never have made. Give your calmer self a vote in every big financial decision, not just the version of you under pressure. Give it 30 days and revisit the cycle honestly to see what actually changed. Notice how much lighter decisions feel once that 30-day pause becomes a normal part of how you handle money. Real freedom here is not about restriction. It is about finally making choices without your back against the wall. Carry that feeling of choice forward into the next chapter, because it is exactly what an emergency fund protects. Mistake number 6. The one I told you catches almost everyone off guard. Having no real emergency fund. Here is how it usually plays out. The car breaks down, or the water heater dies, or a medical bill shows up. Without savings sitting there ready, that surprise expense goes straight onto a credit card. And now you are not just dealing with a broken water heater. You are dealing with a broken water heater plus new interest. This is the mistake that quietly recreates all the other 9 over and over again, year after year. Even $1,000 sitting in a separate account changes this entire equation. It is not about being fully prepared for everything. It is about breaking the automatic reflex to reach for a card. Take Sophia, 36. Every single year for 5 years, some emergency added new debt right as she was almost debt-free. The moment she built even a small buffer, that yearly cycle finally stopped repeating itself. Start absurdly small if you have to. Even $25 a week builds real protection over 1 year. An emergency fund is not a savings goal. It is armor against the mistakes you have not made yet. Financial advisors often recommend 3 to 6 months of expenses saved. And for many people after 35, that number feels impossible. So forget that number for now. It is a long-term goal, not a starting line. The starting line is simply this: 1 month where you do not reach for a card when something unexpected happens. Automate a small transfer to a separate account the day your paycheck lands, before you even see the money in checking. Out of sight genuinely does mean out of mind, and out of mind means it will not get spent on something else. Here is a mental shift that makes building an emergency fund feel less like deprivation and more like self-respect. Stop calling it savings for a moment, and start calling it what it actually is: insurance against your own bad timing. Bad timing is not a character flaw. Cars break down in random months. Bodies get sick on random days. That is simply life. An emergency fund does not prevent bad timing. It just makes sure bad timing does not automatically become new debt. Keep this money boring on purpose. A separate, slightly inconvenient account is more effective than a flashy investment account. Inconvenience is a feature here, not a flaw. It creates just enough friction to stop casual, non-emergency withdrawals. Once that buffer exists, something remarkable happens to your entire relationship with money. The background hum of anxiety drops. Here is a practical starting number if $1,000 still feels completely out of reach right now. Start with $100. Just 100. It will not cover a transmission, but it covers plenty of smaller surprises. Small wins here matter more than the exact dollar amount, because they prove to your brain that this system actually works. Once that first buffer is real, growing it to 500, then 1,000, feels far less impossible than it did at 0. Keep the emergency fund in a completely separate bank from your everyday checking account if you can manage it. The extra step of transferring money between banks adds just enough friction to protect it from casual spending. Celebrate the first $100 saved the same way you would celebrate a real financial milestone, because it genuinely is one. Momentum built on genuine celebration tends to last far longer than momentum built purely on guilt or fear. Consider this fund the quiet hero of your entire financial plan, even though it rarely gets any of the spotlight. It does not grow fast or look impressive, but it is often the single biggest reason a plan survives real life. Now let's talk about 2 mistakes that ripple outward to people beyond just you. Treat every dollar added to this fund as a small deposit into your own future calm, not just a number on a screen. Over time, that calm becomes just as real and just as valuable as the dollars themselves. Even a partially built fund is infinitely more protective than the empty account most people are starting from today. This fund is not glamorous. It will never trend online, but it is quietly one of the highest leverage habits on this entire list. Protect it the way you would protect anything else that keeps your whole plan standing upright. Carry this same protective instinct into the next chapter, because it applies just as much to your credit and your name. Mistakes 7 and 8 are closely related, and both involve underestimating how debt ripples outward. Mistake 7. Co-signing a loan for someone without treating it as your own debt. When you co-sign, the loan appears on your credit report exactly as if you took it out yourself. If the other person misses a payment, your score takes the hit too, often without you even knowing right away. Take Robert, 46. He co-signed his nephew's car loan out of pure generosity. 2 missed payments later, Robert's own mortgage refinance application was suddenly denied. He had no idea the 2 situations were connected until the loan officer explained it to him directly. Mistake 8. Simply not paying attention to your credit score until the exact moment you need it. Your score is not just a number for banks. It is the interest rate you will get on every future loan. A lower score after 35 can mean paying tens of thousands more over a mortgage than someone with better credit. The fix for both is the same discipline. Check your score every few months and never sign your name to someone else's risk without a real plan. Your name on a document is a promise. Treat every promise like it is fully your own. Before co-signing anything, ask yourself one blunt question. If they stopped paying tomorrow, could I absorb the full payment myself? If the honest answer is no, that is not a co-sign. That is a bet you cannot afford to lose. Your credit score is not just about approval. It quietly determines interest rates on everything from mortgages to car insurance. Checking it does not lower it either, despite what a lot of people quietly assume out of fear. Set a recurring reminder once a quarter, review the number, and address anything unfamiliar on the report immediately. Let's go a little deeper on why co-signing feels so emotionally difficult to say no to in the first place. Saying no to a family member asking for help can feel, in the moment, like a betrayal of love or loyalty. But real love includes protecting your own financial stability too, because an unstable co-signer eventually cannot help anyone. There are gentler alternatives to a full co-sign that still show support without putting your entire credit file at risk. A one-time cash gift with a clear limit protects the relationship without permanently linking your financial future to theirs. On the credit score side, one overlooked detail matters enormously: how much of your available credit you are actually using. Keeping usage below roughly 30% of your total limit can noticeably improve your score within just a few months. One more detail on credit scores that surprises a lot of people: the length of your credit history matters more than they expect. Closing your oldest card, even one you rarely use, can actually shorten your history and quietly lower your score. Sometimes the better move is simply keeping an old card open with one small recurring charge, paid off every month. Little details like this rarely make headlines, but they quietly shape the interest rates you get offered for decades. If you already co-signed a loan for someone, check in with them calmly every few months, not just after a missed payment. A short, kind check-in keeps both of you accountable and catches problems long before they hit your credit report. If your credit score is lower than you would like, remember, it is a snapshot of recent history, not a permanent verdict. Consistent on-time payments and lower utilization can move that number meaningfully within just 6 to 12 months. Both of these mistakes share the same root cause: underestimating how connected your financial decisions are to other people's lives. Once you see that connection clearly, both mistakes become much easier to catch before they cause real damage. Now let's talk about the two mistakes that quietly undo every other fix on this entire list. Treat your name on any financial document the same way you would treat a promise made out loud to someone you love. That mindset alone filters out most of the risky cosigns before they ever reach the signature line. Both of these mistakes are quiet by nature. They rarely announce themselves until months after the real damage is already done. That is exactly why a regular check-in matters here just as much as it does with your debt itself. Carry that same habit of checking in forward into the next chapter, where structure ties every single fix together. Mistakes 9 and 10 are about structure, or more accurately, the total absence of it. Mistake 9. Not having any actual payoff strategy at all, just paying whatever feels urgent that week. No snowball, no avalanche, no plan on paper, just reacting to whichever bill is loudest right now. This might be the single most common mistake on this entire list, because it feels like effort without actually being direction. Take James, 43. He was paying extra toward debt every single month for 3 years with no visible progress. When we mapped it out, he was randomly rotating which card got the extra payment based on mood, not math. The moment he picked one method and followed it on paper, his progress became visible within 60 days. Mistake 10. Building a plan once and never revisiting it when life actually changes. A raise happens, a new baby arrives, a job is lost, and the original plan just keeps running on autopilot. A debt plan is not a tattoo. It is a living document that needs a checkup every few months. Set one recurring appointment with yourself every 90 days to look at the plan and adjust it to your actual life. Strategy without review just becomes another thing you meant to fix, but never quite got around to. Here is a simple way to build a real strategy in under 30 minutes, starting tonight if you want to. Step 1. List every debt with its balance and interest rate, exactly like we covered earlier in this video. Step 2. Choose avalanche or snowball, whichever you know you will actually stick with for the next year. Step 3. Automate the minimums so nothing is ever missed, then manually direct every extra dollar toward your chosen target debt. Step 4. Put a recurring reminder on your calendar every 90 days to revisit the whole plan and adjust it. That is the entire system. No spreadsheet wizardry required, just a plan that actually exists somewhere outside your head. Let's talk about why so many well-intentioned plans quietly fall apart within the first 90 days. It is almost never because the plan was wrong. It is because life moved and the plan stayed frozen in place. A new job with a different pay schedule, a rent increase, an unexpected expense that eats the extra payment amount. None of these events mean the plan failed. They simply mean the plan needed a 5-minute update that never happened. This is why the quarterly check-in matters so much more than people initially assume when they first build a plan. It is not about redoing everything from scratch. It is a 15-minute glance to confirm the plan still matches reality. Treat that quarterly check-in like brushing your teeth, not like a major project. Small, routine, and completely non-negotiable. If writing a full strategy feels overwhelming tonight, here is the absolute minimum version to get started right now. One sentence. My highest interest debt is blank, and every extra dollar goes there until it is gone. That single sentence, taped somewhere you will see it daily, is a real strategy. Simple as it looks. You can always add complexity later. Tonight, that one sentence is more structure than most people ever write down. Pair your quarterly check-in with something you already enjoy, like a favorite coffee shop or a quiet Sunday morning. Attaching the habit to something pleasant makes it far more likely to actually happen every single quarter. Keep your written plan somewhere physical if possible. A fridge, a mirror, a wallet insert, not buried in a folder on your phone. Physical visibility keeps the plan part of your daily environment, instead of something you only remember once a year. Structure is not about being rigid. It is about giving your money a clear job to do every single month. Without that job description, extra money tends to drift toward whatever feels most urgent in the moment, rarely the smartest choice. Now let's zoom out and look at what happens when several of these mistakes are active at the exact same time. A written plan does not need to be complicated to work. It just needs to exist somewhere outside your own memory. Memory fades under stress. Paper does not. And that difference matters more than people expect during hard months. A plan without review eventually becomes just another forgotten document, no matter how well it was written on day one. Keep the review simple, keep it scheduled, and let that small habit carry the entire plan forward for years. Here is what almost nobody shows you. What happens when several of these mistakes stack together at once? Minimum payments, plus no emergency fund, plus no real strategy, is not three separate problems. It is one compounding disaster. Run the numbers on someone carrying $15,000 in high-interest debt for a full decade with these patterns active. The interest paid alone can quietly exceed the original amount borrowed, sometimes by a significant margin. That is money that could have funded a retirement account, a child's education, or simply years of peace of mind. And the cost is not only financial. Chronic debt stress after 35 is linked to disrupted sleep and strained relationships. It shows up in short tempers, in avoided conversations, in a quiet tension that follows you into every room. But here is the flip side, and this is the part that should genuinely excite you right now. Every single mistake we just covered has a fix that takes less than an hour to put in motion. The compounding effect that made these mistakes so dangerous works exactly the same way in reverse. Once you flip the pattern, think about it like this. 1 leaking pipe is a repair. 5 leaking pipes at once is a flood. Most people reading this list recognize themselves in 3, 4, sometimes 5 of these 10 mistakes at the same time. That is not a reason to panic. It is actually useful information, because it tells you exactly where to start. The mistakes that compound the fastest are almost always the structural ones. No plan, no emergency fund, wrong interest order. Fix those 3 first, in that order, and the smaller mistakes tend to lose most of their power on their own. Let's walk through a realistic composite example so this compounding effect stops being abstract and starts feeling real. Picture someone carrying $12,000 in card debt, paying only minimums, with 0 emergency fund and no written plan. Over 10 years, interest alone on that scenario can realistically exceed $8,000, money that produced nothing in return. Now compare that to the same person applying just 3 fixes: interest order, a small emergency fund, and a written plan. The payoff timeline often shortens by several years, and the total interest paid can drop by more than half. Same income, same starting debt. Completely different outcome, purely because of which patterns were active or corrected. That gap, multiplied across an entire working life, is the real, quiet cost these mistakes carry after 35. It is worth saying plainly, this compounding effect works exactly as powerfully in your favor as it does against you. The same math that quietly drained years from people stuck in these patterns can rebuild years just as quickly once reversed. That is not motivational fluff. It is simply how compounding works, whether it is compounding debt or compounding progress. Every fix from this video, stacked together, creates the exact same multiplying effect, just pointed in the opposite direction. Print or write out your own version of this comparison, using your real numbers instead of the example we just walked through. Seeing your own name attached to the projected outcome makes the entire exercise land with far more weight. Share this comparison with a partner or close friend if you have one, because accountability tends to make the fixes stick longer. You do not need to do this alone, and honestly, most people who succeed with this did not do it entirely alone either. This is the chapter I most want you to actually sit with, because it reframes every single mistake we already covered. It is not about any one mistake destroying your finances. It is about several small leaks combining into one real flood. Print your own numbers here if you can. Seeing your actual name next to a shortened timeline changes how real this feels. This is not a hypothetical anymore. Once you plug in your own numbers, it becomes your actual future. Hold on to that image, because it is the entire reason the next chapter matters so much. Every fix we covered feeds directly into that better version of the timeline you just pictured. And that better timeline is not reserved for people with higher incomes, it is available to anyone willing to apply the pattern. Whatever combination of mistakes applies to you right now, remember that combination can shift just as quickly once you start correcting it. Nothing here is permanent, not the mistakes, and not the compounding damage they cause when left unattended. Keep this chapter close, because everything you fix from here forward is working directly against this exact compounding effect. Let's bring it all together. 10 mistakes that quietly define whether debt controls your life after 35 or you control it. Only paying the minimum, not knowing your full debt picture, using credit to fund a lifestyle you cannot afford, ignoring high-interest debt first, taking new debt to cover old debt, having no real emergency fund at all, co-signing loans carelessly, ignoring your credit score, having no clear strategy, and never adjusting that strategy as life changes. None of these mistakes make you a bad person, or bad with money forever. They just make you human. The difference between staying stuck and actually breaking free almost never comes down to income. It comes down to awareness, one honest look at the real numbers, and a plan you actually revisit. So here is your one action for tonight. Pick the single mistake from this list that hit closest to home. Just one, not all 10 at once. One mistake, fixed this week, changes the entire trajectory from here. Drop a comment below telling me which mistake you are tackling first. I read every single one. If this video gave you a clearer picture of where your money is actually going, hit like so it reaches more people who need it. And subscribe for more real, practical breakdowns of money and behavior, built for people building real lives after 35. You do not need to fix everything today. You just need to fix the next thing. Let's go. I know lists like this can feel heavy. 10 mistakes laid out one after another can start to feel like an accusation. It is not meant to be one. It is meant to be a map, because you cannot fix what you cannot name. And now you have named all 10. That alone puts you ahead of most people still avoiding the number entirely. Save this video if you need to come back to a specific mistake later, and share it with someone who needs to hear it too. Real change after 35 is not about starting over. It is about redirecting momentum you already have in a better direction. Before you go, I want to leave you with one more thought, because I think it matters more than any single tip. Nobody becomes financially free by accident. It is always the result of a series of small, boring, repeated decisions. The extra $50, the quarterly check-in, the honest look at the full number. None of it is exciting, but boring, repeated, and consistent beats exciting, sporadic, and abandoned every single time, in every single area of life. You already made it through this entire video, which honestly puts you ahead of most people who never even start. Whatever you choose to fix first, choose it tonight, while the motivation from watching this is still fresh in your mind. Thank you for spending this time with me. Now close this video, open that one account, and take the very first step. One last thing before you go, and this one matters more than any statistic in this video. You do not need permission to start fixing this tonight. You do not need a perfect month or a fresh January 1st. Today, whatever day it happens to be, is a completely valid day to begin. Thanks again for watching all the way through. I will see you in the comments, and I will see you in the next one. If this video helped even one thing click into place, that was genuinely the entire point of making it. Take care of yourself, take care of your number, and I will genuinely see you in the very next video. Before you close this video, pick your one mistake, say it out loud to yourself, and write it down somewhere visible. That small, deliberate act of naming it is often the exact moment real change quietly begins. You made it through all 10 mistakes, and that alone shows a level of commitment most people never actually reach. Let's bring everything together one final time before you go take that first real step. If you skipped ahead to this chapter, no judgment at all, but consider going back for the mistake that felt most relevant. Sometimes the details matter just as much as the summary, especially the ones tied to your specific situation. Every chapter in this video pointed toward the exact same conclusion. Small, consistent action beats big, occasional effort every time. Carry that lesson with you long after this video ends, because it applies to far more than just your debt. Thank you again for giving me your time today. It genuinely does not go unnoticed or unappreciated.